Hello everyone, I wanted to quickly do a tutorial for you to answer the two sets of SAQs that I'm posting to AP Classroom for you, but also to help us so that we can do well on the AP exam that's going to be 45 minutes and online in May. So this will be the easiest opportunity for us to earn college credit because it is most likely going to either be all SAQ based or an LEQ. So starting us off, let's take a look at what the SAQ will actually look like. So if you look here, the SAQ is actually going to be 40 minutes long. So it's 40 minutes, and in that 40-minute time span, you have 9 questions that you have to be able to answer. So there's a question 1, which is made up of A, B, and C. Each of these questions is worth 1 point. So you either, if you get A, you either get it or you don't, you either get it or you don't, you either get it or you don't. So it's really important for us to be able to understand, like, how do we answer these questions so that we can be the most successful on it. And it's 40 minutes each, and with 9 questions, that means that you're spending about 13 minutes per sets of question. And then if we even dig into that even deeper, if we divide 13 by 12 by 3, that means that we're spending about 4 minutes on each question answering it. So we can make this a lot easier than we think it is. So it is going to be a lot easier than what we think it is. I want to just direct you to doing a little bit more of the review. Last week I posted 4 videos to help you review for the content at the beginning of the course. So remember, it's only covering units 1 through 6, which is the yellow period, all the way up to the orange period, no red period for you. And that's starting with 1200. And so that's why I posted the videos for the Mongols and the Indian Ocean Trade Network and Mansa Musa. And then I'll post a couple more this week to help us. There's also this guy here. I'm posting him to Google Classroom to help you remember too. His name is Mr. Heimler. He has really great review videos, and he also has really great results for his students. So if you think like, hey, I don't want to go back and reread everything, but I also don't remember everything from September and October, this is a great opportunity. If you're one of those who's like, hey, I don't like those videos, even though these are crash course and they're a little faster, Heimler definitely goes slower, and he goes into more depth, I think, on them. If you don't like doing either videos, there's also your textbook. If you didn't bring your textbook home, I'm going to go ahead and work with the manufacturer of AMSCO so that I can post the textbook pages for you on a Google Classroom as well to help you reread those too. But those are some of the resources for you. Just to remember, like, we've gone over how to write a SAQ, but in the last month, everything has kind of changed a little bit. So you probably remember the ACE format. This is the same as the ACE format, but I'm just really breaking it down, honing into some of the mistakes that we made on AP Classroom, and also some of the tips that I have to making answering these questions a lot easier and a lot faster for you. So if you like ACE, do your thing. If you still have a difficulty answering an SAQ, let's go for it here. So here are the basics of how to answer it. The first thing I noticed on AP Classroom that we need to be able to do is label each answer. So we have to label all parts of the question. So this is a student. This is actually Anaya's. This is actually Anaya's SAQ. And she actually did pretty well on hers. She got 4 points, I believe. So she got 4 out of them. But even though she answered them well, it looks like it's all one long sentence, and we don't want that to be the case here. It's not just going to be one giant paragraph. Instead, we need to be able to break this down into which parts of the question are you answering. So if we look at Adriel's here, who also got 4 on his too, he's answering which parts of the questions he's answering with, he's labeling which parts of the question he's answering with each. That's what you need to be able to do. The second thing that you want to do to help you practice for this online exam is to write down the time that you start taking it so that you can see, well, how long is it taking me to answer each part of the question? How long did I spend on 1A, 1B, 1C? How long did I spend all together? You want to try to get to the point where you're at no more than 13 minutes. So through April when we're practicing too, hopefully we're getting down to 13 minutes, and that's why this next AP Classroom assignment that I have for you is not timed, so that you can kind of figure out how can I best answer it first. All right, here are the must-dos. We're going to go through each part of these together. So there's 4 must-dos in order to be able to answer this exam. The first one, here it is. This is better. There's 4 steps to it. We're going to go through each step one by one. So the first step is we need to read the question. So when I was reading some of your answers, I noticed that we're not actually answering what the question is asking us. And reading is fundamental. So read the question, read the question, read the question, because there's nothing like spending a long time on an answer and then realizing that you got no points because your answer has nothing to do with what you're being asked. So, in reading the question, it's really important because there's 3 types of SAQs that you're going to be given. Each of them is all SAQs are asking you to be able to answer from your own head. It's to be able to memorize what you have studied. So study it so that you memorize it so you can apply it to this answer. The first type of SAQ short answer question is historiography. That means that you're going to be given the argument of a historian. So you're going to be given an excerpt of an argument from a person who wrote a book or an essay. And you have to either support or refute what that historian is saying. And what are you going to support or refute that with? You're going to support or refute that with historical evidence. This is the evidence from your head. This is all the stuff that you've studied. Right? You have to be able to do it that way. The second type is a stimulus-based question, and you remember what stimuli are. So the stimulus it can either be an excerpt from a text. It'll either be a picture or a photograph, a painting, a piece of artwork, or so on. And then you still have to do that again, historical evidence from your head. What is this showing? Where is this from? And then sometimes they ask you to do one that's all from your own head. I personally think this one's the easiest because I think you can get really tripped up on the other 2. But the own head, I think, is whatever. So let's look at each type here from the ones that you guys had to answer the last time. This is another one. This is Avril, who got, I think she had the highest score in the class on hers, because she got full credit for her first answer and she got 2 points for her second one. So let's take a look at the questions that each of them are asking. Then we're going to break down how we'd answer those questions. So on the last one that you guys did on AP Classroom, it said the first part of question 1 was to identify one external development that led to the collapse of the Qing Empire in the early 20th century. So this is asking us to do a couple of things. So the early 20th century, that's going to 1900. So that means that you shouldn't be talking about, I think somebody started bringing up the Mandate of Heaven. And I'm that's great. But this is asking us for a specific thing that leads to the collapse of the empire. And this is saying to identify one. Here's this word identify, and this is something that, I first want to ask you, which of the 3 is this? Is this a historiography question? Is this a stimulus question? Or is this a general knowledge question? Okay, that's a good guess. Good, great. Okay. If you said it's general knowledge, go ahead and kiss your brain. Really great. This is just asking you this is not providing you stimulus. You don't have to refute an argument. You just got to know it. And the great thing about this first question is that this first question is only asking you to identify. Whenever you're given a question that asks you just to identify, they only want you to write one sentence. More on that later. How about this question here? So here's the excerpt that we have, and then here is what question 1 asks us to do. Identify one piece of evidence that Dwara uses in the passage to support his claim regarding racial attitudes in Japanese militarism in the second paragraph. So take a moment to think about which one of these is it? Is it historiography, stimulus, general knowledge? Okay, so this is a tricky one because automatically you're like, hey, it's got this excerpt. I see quotes. I see it's taken from this thing. My first my inclination is to think that it's a stimulus. But when I read the question, it says, identify one piece of evidence that Dwara uses, the author of the passage, to support his claim. I'm defending an argument. I have to find evidence that supports an argument, so therefore it's historiography that I'm doing here. Okay? So you have to be able to identify the types of questions. Now let's dig a little bit deeper and go into like how we answer it. So when we're answering a question, the first sentence should always just answer the question. And sometimes the questions are only asking you to do one thing. Let's go back to this one on the Qing Empire. It says, identify one internal development that led to the collapse of the Qing Empire in the 20th century. It's only asking me to identify. If I only have to identify and I don't have to do anything else, I only have to write one sentence. Yes, one sentence. It's asking me to identify one internal development inside of Qing China. What happened that caused this empire to collapse in the 1900s? So, if I have to identify that one, I need to make sure that my identification comes with specific evidence. It has to. It must. It has to be something that's fairly specific. What would an answer be? So here are 4 different answers that AP College Board would have accepted as an answer to get full credit, to get the full point for this answer. I'm using this one because this is one that we specifically went over. And this one was the Taiping Rebellion. This one sentence answer answers the question, gets full points. The Taiping Rebellion destabilized Qing China and contributed to its collapse. That's it. The answer is, what was an internal problem that led to the collapse? Taiping Rebellion. And it's naming it specifically. It's not just saying rebellion. It's not just saying overpopulation. It's naming something specific. It has to be like a proper noun, a proper person, place, or thing that you're referring to. Okay, let's look at the second type of answer here, or second type of question. So this question here for task B, that usually the questions build in complexity, and that means that they're going to build in length, but you should never go beyond 4 sentences. Never go beyond 4 sentences. So task B asks us to do something different. Task A asks us to just identify 1 sentence. Task B asks us to explain. When College Board or a professor or your parent or a police officer or the judge asks you to explain, not only must you provide specific evidence where you're going to have to identify, but then you have to do something else. So I'm going to put a little, I don't know, what would Mr. Lesson call this? An equation. I'm going to put you have to identify and then you have to add the term because. Identify plus a because and your actual because statement equals your answer. Now, this answer, an explain answer, should probably be, it could be between 1 to 3 sentences. I'm going to show you some examples that show you how you could answer it in 1 sentence. But if you're not one of those people and you're like, hey, I want to do my simple sentences, I don't want to do these compound sentences, these compound complex sentences, that's completely fine too. However, I'm going to go back to your evidence should always be specific, and it should explain how or why the historical example answers the question. It has to do that. So let's take a look. 1 external development that led to the collapse of the Qing Empire in the early 20th century. Again, I'm reminding myself that this is talking about the early 1900s. External means it's outside of China. And then a collapse that's leading to it to end. What outside of China is leading this dynasty to collapse in the 1900s? So this one I thought was another one that was easier because we went over this one specifically, and that was the Boxer Rebellion. But notice how College Board writes the answer. The suppression of the Boxer Rebellion by European states, Japan and the United States. I'm going to stop there. So a couple of things, specific evidence, Boxer Rebellion, Japan, the United States. Now I'm going to continue with the answer. Helped lead to the collapse of the Qing dynasty empire because, ding, 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 there's a because. Here's how or why the Boxer Rebellion shows that it led to the collapse. Let's continue. Because foreign powers imposed harsh conditions on China for peace and occupied Beijing, which humiliated Qing rulers. Okay, so sorry for my not speaking well there, but which humiliated Qing rulers. This is so important. The because is important. With an explanation must come a because. All right. I wanted to give you one last one that shows you a way to answer these types of questions that ask you to explain in 2 sentences. And so for the second question that was on Japan, task C, which I think is the most complex, so usually the third question, the C question, is going to be the most complex. It's just going to ask you to do the most amount of things. And that means that you're probably going to have your 2 to 4 sentences there. So let's look at what task C asks us to do. Explain one way in which the ideology of Japanese Pan-Asianism, as described in the passage, differed from the ideologies of other militarized states in the 1930s. Whoa. So I've got a few things that I know I have to do. So my step 1 is I know that I have to explain. So that means I need to be able to identify and then add my because, but I have to figure out what I'm identifying first. So first I have to be able to identify the Pan-Asianism described in the passage. So my question to myself is going to be, what's the Pan-Asianism in the passage? So I have to be able to state that I understand the passage. I'm not going to use any quotes there. I'm going to be able to write out what is the Pan-Asianism being described in the passage. But then it's asking me to do something even bigger here. So even though I have to be able to define this one, the ideology here, I also have to say how it differed from other ideologies of other militarized states in the 1930s. Whoa. So now this is asking me to pull even more knowledge out of my beautifully smart brain, and I have to figure out what other ideologies existed in militarized states in the 1930s. I'm thinking the 1930s, that's the red period. 1930s, World War I, World War II, but we didn't get to World War II yet. World War I, we left off, we were talking about Germany and Italy. What were the militarized states? What were some of the ideologies happening in Germany and Italy at the time? I'm thinking of fascism. If I don't want to do Germany and Italy, I'm like, oh, what other ideologies are going on at the time? What other ones? Communism in Russia. So I'm going to pick one. Am I going to compare Pan-Asianism in Japan to fascism or to communism in Russia? And so let's take a look at one of the good answers that we have here. And I just assume that many of you guys are getting down on the get down with fascism. So here's what a great answer would be for that one. Some fascist states, such as Nazi Germany, believed that certain civilizations and races were biologically superior to others. They're saying what the ideology is here. They're naming the ideology of fascism in Germany, and that inferior races could be enslaved. Japanese Pan-Asianism believed that a civilization war between Asia and the West was necessary to demonstrate that Asian civilizations were not racist. So it's doing the exact job, and it did it in 2 sentences. But there's a lot of thinking that's happening here, but you're capable and smart, so you can do it. Alrighty, here are the don'ts to do for an SAQ, and this is just some of the things that I saw in some of your answers. I pulled this slide from online from another AP teacher, but it's a great slide. So the one is just don't repeat the prompt. Some of you are doing that. Don't write a short essay. Ooh, some of yours are too long. Nope, don't do that one. Don't write a paragraph. Remember, label each answer. Do not write a thesis statement. It's keeping it simple, so you want the KISS method, but you also don't want it to be the too kissy method. That doesn't make sense, but whatever. You don't want a bulleted list. You don't want to write in sentence fragments. You still need to be complete sentences. But the biggest thing that I saw were quotes. No quotes. Don't put a quote in there. I don't want to see a quote. I feel like Sophia from The Color Purple. Like, no, do not add a quote. Don't bring me no quotes no more, okay? I don't want to see a quote. Don't put a quote in here. Miss Madden will thank you for it next year. Your professor's aide, if you're going on to college next year, is going to thank you. No quotes, just answer the question, show that you understand what the quote means. The last thing is, if you're surprised how obvious and easy you think the answer is, you probably didn't give enough detail. The only time that this is not true is when it's an identify question. If it's an identify only question, yeah, sure, it was easy, whatevs. But if it's asking you to explain and you didn't add a because, and you're like, that was really simple, there's probably something wrong, go back and reread it. Okay. So this is just an example, again, of a student that used a quote. They wasted a lot of time here copying and pasting or retyping. Oh, quote here, don't do it. Just show what this is meaning. Show what it says. Just because you have more doesn't mean that it's a better answer. We saw the examples from College Board of the 1, 2, and 3 sentences, and that's all that you need. So here's your turn. I'm posting to AP Classroom your prompt. You will be expected to answer all 6, the 3 parts of each question, and it's going to be over the Indian Ocean Trade Network and the Mongols. So make sure that you're able to use that one. It's going to be for a homework grade. All of your previous grades are for classwork grades, but remember that your grades are broken down by percentage points, and so I want to balance it out a little bit here and have some upward movement for you all. So the rest are going to be for homework grades, and then we're going to move on to assessments, hopefully if we ever get back in the classroom. So just really quickly, if you have it and you're like, I got this, go ahead and stop the video here and move on to doing to AP Classroom. If you're like, I don't know, I want to kind of go over how these questions are going to look, or am I breaking it down properly, continue the video and I'll do that with you right now. So here's the first question. This one is on the effects of trade in the Indian Ocean Trade Network. And if we look at this question, the first step was to read it. So we're going to read this first so that we can understand it and then determine what type of question it is. So identify one way. Ooh, I got identify. That's my first hint, my first clue. Yay. Identify one way that the technological changes, one way, not 2, not 3, for those of you who like to throw everything in the kitchen sink in there. One way that technological changes facilitated trade in the Indian Ocean period in 1200 to 1450. So I know, because it says identify only and that's it, that's the end of the sentence, this is going to be a 1-sentence answer. That's it, 1 sentence. But I have to find out technological changes. So those are new forms of technology that are introduced. So I'm going to be thinking about what are those new technologies and that came about, and how those technologies helped with trade. So any technologies that facilitated trade in the Indian Ocean Network, 1 sentence. Now let's take a look at what the second one asks me to do. Ooh, this one asks me to explain. Automatically, I know that in explain comes, this is going to be 1 to 2 sentences again, but I know that this is going to be an identify plus my equation again, plus a because. Okay, so I need to make sure that I'm including my because statement and showing how or why my specific example answers the question. Oh, I didn't finish. Let me keep going. Identify one way, one, not two, just one, that trade in the Indian Ocean network led to political change. So my specific example is going to be on political. Now, political is the easiest part of InSpec that you guys all remember. Political, remember, is going to refer to anything that has to do with changes in government, empires. Sometimes it can be war. Sometimes it can also be like borders and things like that. But so like what shifts occurred in empires during this time because of trade? What political changes happened here? I'm also going to include leaders in that one. So I'm going to state what that specific change is using a proper noun. Like I should be able to state specific facts. Proper term, include my because showing how this specific example shows a change. My next question asks me to do something similar. There's an explain again, so I know that I've got another 1 to 2 sentences. I know that I have another identify plus a because. And this one says, one way that trade in the Indian Ocean in the period 1200 to 1450 led to cultural change. So you might be saying like, oh, but cultural, political versus cultural, what is this? You guys really mix up cultural and social, and we don't want to do that one. So I'm going to put what cultural is up here. So cultural is any of those things that affect culture. That's kind of weird. So culture is going to be some of the simple things. So we can say like religion, food, dress, language, beliefs. I think that's also religion. So it's going into any of those types of things too. So, architecture, arts, any of those types of things. So now you have to state what this specific change is, proper noun, add your because. How or why does this show a cultural change? Okay, continue on to the second one. The second one, this is all about Central Asian nomads. This should automatically trigger something for you. Central Asian nomads, you should be like, dang, if I just know the time period, I know who it's referring to. So if I'm talking about the Tang dynasty, I know those Central Asian nomads are this group of people. I'm talking about the Qing. If I'm talking about the Ming dynasty, I know who the Central Asian nomads here. The Yuan dynasty, I know the Central Asian nomads are there too. So let's take a look, and we have to look at this question again as well. Automatically, it says, use the passage below to answer all the parts of the question that follows. This is talking about a passage, so this is between a historiography question and a stimulus question. Let's look at the questions to see what type of question it is. Describe one instance of Central Asian nomads providing empires with new emperors, sultans, or sons of heaven during the period circa 600 BCE to 1450. So this one is not asking me to support an argument, to refute an argument. Therefore, this is just a stimulus question. So I need to be able to describe one instance. Describing, this one's a little bit tricky. We only talked about identifying and explaining questions. This describing questions means that it's going to be an identify question plus a little bit of contextualization that you have to be able to do there. You're just adding a little bit more depth to your answer there, but it's still just going to be 1 to 2 sentences being specific. That means that you have to name the Central Asian nomad group and what did they do. So what new emperor, sultan, or sons of heaven came about. Let's look at the other two. Explain. Explain. identify plus because. One way in which, as Grousset asserts in this passage, the interactions between Central Asian nomads and established Asian civilizations resulted in the conquered vanquishing their conquerors. How the conquered vanquished their conquerors. The people that were conquered did away with the people that conquered them. How can you show this? Where did this happen? Who conquered them or once conquered them? So and how is this showing that this was a change? Then it says, I told you that they build upon each other. This is super simple. This is getting a little bit more complex. This is going to be the most complex. Identify one example of cross-cultural interaction during the period 600 BCE to 1400 CE. Oh, this seems like a one-sentence question to me. But wait, I'm not done reading the question. So I have to identify one sentence. But if I keep reading, other than the Asian interactions mentioned in the passage, other than the Central Asian one, so this means that it has to be outside of Central Asian nomads. So I'm looking for other groups of people that existed between 600 BCE to 1450, other groups that we're talking about here that had a cultural effect that was similar to those described here in the passage. They want to make sure that you know what the passage is saying. What's the cultural effect that's happening here? A and B are clues to that one. And then who else outside of Central Asia had similar effects? So if I'm thinking outside of Central Asia, I'm thinking about maybe South Asia. Maybe I'm thinking about Southeast Asia. I'm thinking about North Africa. Maybe I'm thinking about East Africa. Where are also my other examples? So again, you're putting this all together and answering this here. This is going to be our chunky one. This is our heavy hitter. Because not only do you have to be able to identify and explain it, you also have to show how it's similar to the cultural effects. Remember, cultural, religious, art, architecture, way of living, dress, and so on. That is being shown in the passage. That one's pretty complex. So good luck. If you have questions, I'm going to have open office hours from 9 to 2 on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week. That means that I'm available to GChat, to video chat, FaceTime, email with any student that has any questions. That means I'll be right there to get right back to you. So just, I may even just put a Zoom link up and leave that open. Nope, you got to pay for that. I'm too cheap. So I'll just put a GChat link up so that if you want to join in, you are free to pop up on video or not on video, just on audio. Ask me a question. I can answer you in real time. And that's really great because we don't have to exchange numbers or anything. But again, if you are forgetting any of those facts, check out the videos that are here. Check out your textbook. I'm going to try to put that link up to the textbook online. And I will not see you in class because I don't know if we'll ever get back. I want us to, but I will see you on the internet. And as my favorite podcast says, see you on the internet, boo-boo. Okay. All right. Toodaloo. Bye.